Bridget Jones' Diary begins with a woman who is convinced that everyone else has somehow learned how to be an adult while she is still improvising her way through every meal, every party, and every emotional disaster. Bridget Jones is smart, funny, messy, romantic, insecure, and painfully aware of the gap between the life she has and the polished life she thinks she is supposed to want. She drinks too much, smokes too much, says the wrong thing at the wrong time, and keeps falling in love with men who seem much more certain of themselves than she is. What makes the movie work is that beneath all the embarrassment and comedy, it understands something very real. A lot of people are building their lives while secretly feeling like they are failing at them. The story begins at New Year, when Bridget finds herself once again stuck at her parents' annual holiday gathering, surrounded by smug married people, pushy family friends, and the familiar horror of being treated like a problem that still has not been solved. She is in her early 30s, single, and already exhausted by the way everyone asks about her future, as if it were a delayed train they are all entitled to complain about. At the party, she runs into Mark Darcy, a stiff and awkward barrister who has known her family for years. Their first conversation is a disaster. He comes across as cold, judgmental, and vaguely insulting, and Bridget immediately decides he is one more arrogant man who sees her as a joke. Humiliated and frustrated with herself, Bridget decides that this year will be different. She buys a diary and starts recording the things she wants to change. She will lose weight, she will stop smoking, she will stop drinking so much. She will become calmer, more sophisticated, and less likely to make a fool of herself in public. Most importantly, she will stop letting ridiculous men ruin her life. It is the kind of New Year list people make when they are half serious and half desperate. And because this is Bridget, every good intention is immediately shadowed by chaos. Bridget works at a publishing company where she has a massive crush on her charming boss, Daniel Cleaver. Daniel is witty, flirtatious, confident, and exactly the sort of man who makes a woman feel seen even while he's preparing to disappoint her. He starts sending her playful messages at work, and Bridget, thrilled that someone this attractive is paying attention to her, falls into the flirtation almost instantly. Daniel has the dangerous gift of making even obvious bad behavior seem glamorous. He treats life like a game, and in the early part of the film, Bridget is exactly the kind of person who mistakes that lightness for depth. Their flirtation turns into an affair. Bridget is overjoyed. For a while it feels like her life is finally becoming the romantic story she has always hoped for. Daniel is funny and seductive. He makes her feel desirable. He feeds the fantasy that beneath all her awkwardness, she is really the heroine of the kind of love story she has always imagined. Around the same time, Mark Darcy reappears in her life through family events and chance meetings, and every encounter seems to confirm Bridget's dislike of him. He is serious where Daniel is playful, reserved where Daniel is sparkling, and socially uncomfortable in ways Bridget reads as disapproval. Daniel also tells Bridget something that hardens her opinion of Mark. He claims that Mark once betrayed him badly, ruining his relationship with his wife. Bridget accepts this story because it fits what she already wants to believe. Mark seems stiff and superior. Daniel seems wounded and charming. In Bridget's emotional universe, the choice feels obvious. The relationship with Daniel deepens just enough to make the coming collapse hurt properly. Bridget lets herself believe this is becoming real. She imagines a future. She throws herself into the romance even though there are warning signs everywhere. Daniel is careless, unserious, and always slightly too polished in the way he handles emotion. But Bridget wants love more than she wants caution, and for a while that desire is stronger than her judgment. Then reality arrives brutally. Bridget discovers Daniel with another woman, and the whole fantasy falls apart in an instant. There is no complicated explanation that can rescue him. He's exactly what he seemed to be under the charm. A man who loves attention, variety, and the thrill of being wanted more than he loves honesty. Bridget is devastated not just because she loses Daniel, but because she has once again been humiliated by the kind of hope she cannot stop carrying. This breakup pushes her into one of the most important shifts in the film. She leaves her job and starts over in television, taking a position as a presenter and producer even though she has little experience and far too much nervous energy for live work. The move is brave, but because this is Bridget, bravery arrives covered in panic and disaster. Her television debut is an absolute mess. She speaks awkwardly, stumbles through her reporting, and ends up embarrassing herself on air. These scenes are funny because they are so extreme, but they also keep the movie grounded in Bridget's central struggle. She wants reinvention, but reinvention is humiliating when you have to attempt it in public. While Bridget tries to rebuild herself, Mark begins to emerge as a very different figure from the one she imagined. She runs into him at social events, legal functions, and family situations, and little by little she sees that his discomfort is not cruelty. He is shy, direct, and often terrible at smoothing over a room, but he's not false. He also keeps showing kindness to Bridget in moments when he gains nothing from it. He notices when she is uncomfortable. He protects her from embarrassment when he can. He remembers details about her that other people treat as jokes. Instead of performing charm, he offers something much less flashy and much more dangerous: sincerity. One of the most important moments comes at a dinner party where Bridget is once again made to feel inadequate and ridiculous. Mark is there, and instead of joining the polite cruelty surrounding her, he treats her with unexpected warmth. The emotional logic of the movie starts shifting. Bridget has spent so long being attracted to men who make her feel chosen that she has not fully recognized the value of being respected. At the same time, she begins seeing the cracks in the version of Mark that Daniel sold her. The truth about the past comes out slowly. Daniel was the one who slept with Mark's wife. Daniel was not the betrayed victim. He was the betrayer. This revelation matters far beyond gossip. It forces Bridget to admit that she built her whole opinion of both men around what was easiest and most flattering to believe. Daniel made her feel exciting. Mark made her feel observed. One of those sensations looked like romance, but the other was the beginning of real care. The famous tension between Bridget and Mark starts transforming into something genuine. Their conversations are still awkward, but now the awkwardness feels alive instead of hostile. Mark does not flirt like Daniel. He does not seem to know how. What he does instead is pay attention. He sees Bridget clearly, even in her most embarrassing moments, and does not ask her to become someone else before she is allowed to matter. Bridget's own life keeps moving through a series of comic disasters as she tries to become a better version of herself. She quits smoking, then starts again. She tries to drink less, then has terrible nights. She keeps counting calories, bad decisions, and humiliations in the diary as if self-awareness alone might somehow make her elegant. But what the film gradually shows is that her value has nothing to do with whether she becomes sleek and controlled. The people who truly care about her are drawn not to some perfected future Bridget, but to the woman she already is underneath the panic. Mark eventually tells her in his own restrained way that he likes her exactly as she is. It is such a powerful moment because it speaks directly to the insecurity the film has been building from the beginning. Bridget has spent the whole story cataloging flaws and trying to earn love through self-improvement. Mark's feeling cuts through that logic. He is not saying she should never grow. He is saying she does not have to become someone else to be lovable. That should be the turning point, but this is still a romantic comedy built on delayed understanding, so things get worse before they get better. Bridget, still vulnerable to old patterns, gets drawn back toward Daniel when he reappears with his usual confidence and charm. Daniel represents familiarity as much as temptation. Bridget knows he is bad for her, but he also makes desire feel simple. Mark, on the other hand, asks for trust, and trust is harder. The emotional climax comes when the truth can no longer be avoided. Bridget finally sees Daniel clearly for what he is, and Mark proves himself through action rather than style. The conflict between the two men erupts into one of the most memorable fights in the film, partly because it is so undignified. This is not some elegant cinematic duel. It is messy, clumsy, and almost absurd, which makes it fit the movie perfectly. For all the romantic fantasy Bridget has built in her head, real love is happening in a world where people slip, crash into things, and look ridiculous while trying to defend what matters. After the fight and the chaos that follows, Bridget has to confront the deeper issue under all of it. She has spent so much time imagining love as something dramatic and validating that she almost missed the man who actually sees her. Mark is not perfect. He is awkward, serious, and not especially gifted at timing. But he is honest in a world full of performance. Daniel, for all his sparkle, is ultimately an expert in making desire feel important while avoiding responsibility for anyone else's heart. The ending works because it stays true to Bridget rather than turning her into someone suddenly sophisticated. She does not become a different person. She is still flustered, impulsive, and capable of chaos, but she learns enough to stop confusing being dazzled with being loved. When she runs after Mark, it is not because she is transformed into a flawless heroine. It is because she finally understands what she wants and is brave enough to say it out loud. Their final union is funny, messy, and oddly tender, exactly the way it should be. Instead of a polished grand finale, the film gives us something more human. Bridget chasing love through the snow in inappropriate clothing, dropping dignity in favor of honesty, and finding that the person waiting for her is the one who knew who she was all along. Bridget Jones' Diary works because it treats romantic insecurity with both comedy and compassion. It laughs at Bridget's excesses, her diary obsession, her self-sabotage, and her endless ability to make a bad moment worse. But it never humiliates her the way the world around her does. The movie understands how exhausting it is to live inside constant self-comparison, especially for a woman surrounded by people who keep measuring her against marriage, thinness, polish, and timing. At its heart, this is a story about choosing between two ways of being loved. One kind flatters your fantasy, the other sees your reality. Bridget begins the film desperate to become someone else before life can properly begin. She ends it learning that real love starts when someone sees the chaos, the insecurity, the hunger, the humor, and the heart all at once and stays anyway. So Bridget Jones' Diary ends not with perfection but with relief. A woman who thought she had to fix every flaw before she could be wanted discovers that the right person was never waiting for the polished version. He was waiting for the real one. And once Bridget finally believes that, her life can begin in earnest.